There's something your mind is doing right now that you weren't aware of until this very second. Maybe it's the feeling of your tongue resting in your mouth. Maybe it's the rhythm of your breathing that suddenly feels manual instead of automatic. Maybe it's the way you can suddenly see the edges of your nose in your peripheral vision, or feel the weight of your clothes against your skin. And now that I've mentioned these things, you might find it impossible to stop noticing them. What if I told you that this momentary awareness isn't the problem? What if the real issue is what happens next? The fear that creeps in, whispering that you'll never be able to unnotice these sensations again. What if millions of people are living with this exact fear right now, trapped in a loop of monitoring their own bodies, desperately trying to return to a time when breathing didn't require thought and blinking happened without permission? You're not imagining this struggle. You're not being dramatic. You're not losing your mind. What you're experiencing has a name, a pattern, and most importantly, a way through. But the path forward isn't what you think it is. It's not about forcing these sensations back into unconsciousness. It's not about finding the perfect distraction technique. It's about something far more counterintuitive than that. Think about the last time you tried not to think about something. Maybe someone told you not to picture a pink elephant, and suddenly pink elephants were all you could see. Your mind works the same way with bodily sensations. The harder you try to ignore your breathing, the louder each breath becomes. The more desperately you attempt to stop noticing your blinking, the more pronounced each blink feels. The more you fight against awareness, the stronger that awareness grows. This isn't a flaw in your brain. It's actually your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do, protecting you from perceived threats. When you label a sensation as dangerous or wrong, your mind's alarm system activates. It keeps that sensation in the spotlight because it believes constant monitoring will keep you safe. But here's what your brain doesn't understand. The sensation was never the threat. The fear of the sensation is what's causing your suffering. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening inside your mind right now. Imagine your attention as a spotlight in a dark theater. Normally, this spotlight moves fluidly, illuminating different parts of the stage as needed: external sounds when someone's talking, internal thoughts when you're planning, bodily sensations only when they're relevant. But something has caused your spotlight to get stuck. It's frozen on one particular spot on the stage. Maybe it's your heartbeat, maybe it's your breathing, maybe it's the feeling of swallowing. Now, instead of accepting that the spotlight is temporarily stuck, you panic. You grab the controls and start yanking them desperately, trying to force the light to move. But the harder you pull, the more the mechanism resists. The more force you apply, the more stuck it becomes. And all that struggling? It's generating heat. It's creating friction. It's turning a minor mechanical issue into a full system meltdown. Research on attention and the brain reveals something fascinating about this process. Your brain has networks that control where your attention goes. One for internal focus, one for external focus. In most people, these networks trade off smoothly. When you need to focus outward, your internal monitoring quiets down. When you need to look inward, your external awareness dims. But when anxiety enters the equation, the switching mechanism gets disrupted. Your internal monitoring network becomes overactive, like a security system that won't stop scanning for threats even when the house is empty. Studies have found that people experiencing this kind of hyperawareness show different patterns of brain activity. Their default mode network, the part of the brain active during rest and self-reflection, stays engaged even when they're trying to focus on external tasks. It's as if the brain refuses to fully shift gears, keeping one foot on the brake while trying to accelerate. But here's where things get interesting. This isn't a permanent rewiring. It's not brain damage. It's a temporary state that your brain has learned, which means it can unlearn it too. The sensation you're monitoring right now, that breathing, that blinking, that heartbeat, your nervous system was always detecting it. Every second of every day, your body sends these signals to your brain. The only thing that's changed is that your brain has mislabeled these normal signals as important, as threatening, as requiring conscious oversight. Think about this. Right now, there are thousands of processes happening in your body that you're not aware of. Your cells are dividing, your liver is filtering, your intestines are digesting. You don't notice any of these because your brain correctly identifies them as automatic processes that don't need your conscious input. The sensation you're stuck on? It belongs in that same category. Your brain has simply made a filing error, placing it in the urgent attention required folder instead of the background operations folder where it belongs. The fear you feel about being aware forever, that's the real enemy here, not the awareness itself. Every time you think, I can't stand noticing this, you're adding emotional weight to a neutral sensation. Every time you check to see if you're still aware of it, you're reinforcing the brain's belief that this requires monitoring. Every time you try to distract yourself, you're confirming that this sensation is something to escape from. Let me share something that might surprise you. People who meditate regularly spend hours deliberately noticing their breath. Yogis spend entire sessions aware of their heartbeat. Athletes train themselves to tune into specific bodily sensations to improve performance. The difference? They don't fear the awareness. They welcome it. They work with it. And when they're done, their attention naturally shifts elsewhere because there's no anxiety keeping it stuck. This reveals the paradox at the heart of your struggle. The solution isn't to stop noticing. It's to notice differently. It's to observe without resistance. It's to be aware without alarm. It's to feel without fear. Because when you remove the emotional charge from a sensation, when you stop treating awareness as an emergency, something remarkable happens. Your brain gets bored. It realizes there's no threat here, no problem to solve, no danger to monitor. And gradually, naturally, without any force or effort, your spotlight starts to move again. But how do you actually do this? How do you change your relationship with a sensation that feels overwhelming? The answer lies in a complete reversal of your current strategy. Instead of trying to push the sensation out of awareness, you invite it in. Instead of seeing it as an invader, you treat it as a guest. Instead of monitoring it with anxiety, you observe it with curiosity. This might sound impossible right now. You might be thinking, but I already notice it too much. Why would I notice it more? Here's the distinction. There's a difference between anxious monitoring and mindful observation. Anxious monitoring is tight, contracted, fearful. It's watching for danger, scanning for problems, bracing for impact. Mindful observation is open, relaxed, curious. It's noticing without judging, observing without controlling, experiencing without resisting. When you anxiously monitor your breathing, you're asking questions like, is this normal? Will it always be like this? What if I suffocate? When you mindfully observe your breathing, you ask different questions. What does this actually feel like? Where do I feel it in my body? How does the in-breath differ from the out-breath? The first approach generates more anxiety. The second approach generates understanding, and understanding dissolves fear. Cognitive behavioral research has shown that the thoughts you have about a sensation determine your emotional response to it more than the sensation itself. Two people can experience the exact same physical feeling, let's say a rapid heartbeat. One person thinks, I must be having a heart attack, and panics. Another thinks, I just climbed stairs, this is normal, and doesn't give it a second thought. Same sensation, completely different experience, all because of interpretation. Right now, your interpretation of bodily awareness is catastrophic. You're telling yourself stories like, this will never end, I'm broken, I'll never have peace again. These aren't facts, they're fears. They're predictions based on anxiety, not evidence. Because the evidence, if you look at it objectively, tells a different story. You've had moments, however brief, where you forgot about the sensation. You've had times when your attention shifted naturally to something else. These moments prove that your attention isn't truly stuck. It's being held in place by fear. Here's an exercise that might seem counterintuitive, but can be transformative. Set aside 5 minutes where you deliberately focus on the sensation that's been bothering you. But here's the key. Approach it like a scientist studying something fascinating, not like a prisoner trying to escape. If it's your breathing, spend those 5 minutes really exploring breathing. Feel the air temperature as it enters your nostrils. Notice how your chest expands differently from your belly. Observe the brief pause between inhale and exhale. What you're doing here isn't making the problem worse. You're changing the relationship. You're teaching your brain that this sensation can be present without emergency. You're showing your nervous system that awareness doesn't equal danger. You're proving to yourself that you can choose to notice something without being trapped by it. This is what exposure and response prevention looks like for sensation-focused anxiety. You expose yourself to the feared sensation deliberately, but you prevent the usual response of panic and resistance. At first, this will spike your anxiety. Your mind will scream that you're making things worse. But if you persist, something shifts. The anxiety starts to decrease. The sensation becomes less charged. What felt like a prison starts to feel like just another room in your house, one you can enter and leave at will. Another powerful approach comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. Instead of trying to control your internal experience, you learn to carry it with you while doing what matters. Yes, you might be aware of your blinking while having a conversation, but you can still listen to your friend. Yes, you might notice you're swallowing while reading, but you can still follow the story. The sensation doesn't have to disappear for you to live your life. It can be there, in the background, while you engage with what's important to you. This is called psychological flexibility, the ability to be present with whatever internal experience you're having while still moving toward what you value. It's like learning to drive in rain. At first, the rain seems like an insurmountable obstacle, but eventually, you realize you can still reach your destination even with raindrops on the windshield. The rain doesn't have to stop for you to move forward. There's something else you need to understand about your predicament. The very fact that you're capable of this intense awareness means your attention is powerful. The same attentional capacity that's causing you distress right now is a strength that's being misdirected. People with this kind of sensory hyperawareness often have above average ability to focus, to notice details, to be present. The problem isn't your attention itself, it's that anxiety has hijacked it and pointed it in an unproductive direction. Think of it like having a high-performance sports car stuck in first gear. The engine is powerful, but it's not being used effectively. The solution isn't to destroy the engine or pretend it's not powerful. It's to learn how to shift gears. It's to understand that the same intensity of attention that's monitoring your heartbeat could be channeled into creative work, deep conversations, or meaningful activities. Many people who've worked through sensation-focused anxiety report that once they stopped fighting the awareness, they discovered it wasn't permanent after all. Days would pass where they'd suddenly realize they hadn't thought about the sensation. Then they'd notice it again, but without the old terror. It would come and go, like weather patterns, no longer feeling like a life sentence. One person described it like this: I spent months convinced I'd never stop noticing my breathing. I tried everything to make it stop. Then, I gave up fighting it. I decided if I had to notice my breathing forever, so be it. And that's when things started to change. The awareness would fade for hours at a time. When it came back, it didn't scare me anymore. Now, months later, I barely think about it unless someone mentions breathing, and even then, it's no big deal. This isn't just one person's story. Clinicians who specialize in OCD and anxiety report similar patterns across thousands of cases. The people who recover aren't the ones who find a magic technique to stop noticing. They're the ones who stop fearing the noticing. They're the ones who make peace with awareness. They're the ones who learn that their attention can be trusted to regulate itself once they stop interfering with it through panic and resistance. Let's talk about what recovery actually looks like, because it's probably not what you're imagining. You might be picturing a day when you never notice these sensations again, when everything goes back to exactly how it was before. But recovery is usually different from that. Recovery is when you notice your breathing sometimes and don't care. It's when your awareness of blinking comes and goes without triggering alarm. It's when you can feel your heartbeat and think, oh, there's my heartbeat, the same way you'd think, oh, there's a cloud. Recovery is not the absence of awareness. It's the absence of fear about awareness. It's not never noticing. It's noticing without distress. It's not perfect automatic processing all the time. It's being okay with sometimes being aware, knowing it will pass, knowing it doesn't mean anything's wrong. This might feel disappointing at first. You want to go back to before, to unknow what you now know, to unfeel what you now feel. But here's what people discover: the after can be better than the before, because now you understand how your attention works. Now you know you can handle uncomfortable awareness. Now you've developed skills that help with all kinds of anxiety, not just this specific fear. You've been through something genuinely difficult. Living with constant bodily monitoring is exhausting. Feeling like your own body has become a prison is deeply distressing. Fighting against your own awareness every waking moment drains energy you need for other things. Your struggle is real, your frustration is valid, and your desire for relief makes complete sense. But you're not broken, your brain is not damaged, you're not destined to monitor these sensations forever. What you're experiencing is a known pattern with known solutions. Millions have walked this path before you. Specialists understand it, research has mapped it, treatments exist that work. You're not alone in this, even when it feels like you're the only person in the world who can't stop noticing their own breathing. The universe of your body, with all its sensations and processes, was never meant to be a source of fear. Your heartbeat isn't an enemy. Your breathing isn't a threat. Your blinking isn't a problem to solve. These are just the gentle rhythms of being alive, the background music of existence that sometimes gets turned up too loud. But volume controls exist. The music can be turned back down, not by force, not by fighting, but by changing how you listen. Right now in this moment, you might still be aware of whatever sensation brought you here. That's okay. You don't need it to stop right this second. You don't need immediate relief to know that relief is possible. You just need to begin shifting your relationship with awareness itself. From enemy to neutral, from neutral to acceptable, from acceptable to unimportant. Each shift is progress, even if the sensation is still there. Your attention wants to flow naturally. It wants to move freely between internal and external, between important and unimportant, between conscious and unconscious. It knows how to do this. It did it perfectly for years before anxiety disrupted the pattern, and it can do it again. Not because you'll force it to, but because you'll stop forcing it not to. Not because you'll find the perfect distraction, but because you'll stop desperately seeking distraction. Not because you'll win the battle, but because you'll stop fighting a war that doesn't need to be fought. The sensation you're monitoring right now, it's not your enemy. The awareness you're experiencing, it's not your prison. The fear you're feeling, it's not your future. They're all just temporary experiences in a mind that's trying to protect you from a danger that doesn't exist. And when your mind finally understands that, When it truly grasps that awareness itself is harmless, the spotlight will start to move again. Slowly at first, then more freely, until one day you realize you haven't thought about that sensation in hours, maybe days. And when you notice it again, because you probably will, it won't feel like a setback. It'll feel like running into an old acquaintance, someone you used to know intensely but who no longer has power over your life. You'll notice, you'll acknowledge, and then you'll move on. Because that's what a recovered looks like. Not perfect unawareness, but peaceful awareness. Not never noticing, but noticing without fear. Your path forward isn't about doing more. It's about doing less. Less fighting, less monitoring, less checking, less avoiding. It's about allowing your natural attention regulation to come back online. It's about trusting your brain to sort important from unimportant without your conscious intervention. It's about learning that you can feel your heartbeat, notice your breathing, be aware of your blinking, and still live a full, meaningful, engaged life. The sensation is not the problem. The fear of the sensation is the problem. And fear, unlike automatic bodily processes, is something that can change. Fear is something that responds to new information. Fear is something that decreases with exposure. Fear is something that dissolves in the face of acceptance. If this resonated with you, drop spotlight moving in the comments below. Sometimes seeing those two words from others reminds us we're all learning to let our attention flow freely again. You're not stuck. You're just scared. And scared is something you won't always be.